Alright, so we've made our world for our character to explore, but now it's time to handle collisions. So we're going to start with our player here, and we're going to start by defining the collision shape to go along with our player. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go here and say new rectangle shape, and I'm going to zoom in so that I can define this rectangle shape. And it's also going to be more helpful, I think, if I have the front animation. And so for my collision shape, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink this down and kind of just make it the bottom part of the body. So doing top-down animation is you know, a little bit more, it's a little bit different than a lot of other sort of collision shapes, right? Because I want the player's head to be able to go up to a cliff, but not, you know, the head doesn't bump, right? It's kind of like where the feet lie, right? So you kind of want to make the collision shape a little bit smaller, and so you'll see what I mean kind of when we get to actually handling these collisions. But the first step here is defining this shape. So we're going to start with this, and we'll see how this works out for us. But then what we need to do is we need to add a collision shape for the things that we want to collide with here. So let's start maybe with the trees. Those are going to be the most straightforward. So what we'll do is we're going to go to our tile map here, and we need to add a physics layer here. So if I go to the physics layer, what we're going to do is make it collide on collision layer 1, because that's also where our player is colliding. So if I go here to our player and we take a look at collision, it's also there. So we just need to make sure that those match. And so once I've added that, what I can do is I can paint that onto my tile set. So if I go to tile set, I go to the property editor and I go to physics layer 0, what I can do is I can paint on a shape here, a collision shape for my different shapes here. So if I go here, what we're going to see is this here. So we're going to want to modify the shape so that we can define where our player can walk. And so again, we want them to kind of be able to maybe walk behind the tree, but not like right into the base of it. So we can just kind of make something like this. We're just going to kind of drag it out like this. You can add different points. I'm using the modify here. I think this is the most helpful. If you right click, it'll delete a point. If you click somewhere along there, it'll add it, and you can click and hold and drag it along. So let's do that for right now and see how this works. So once I've done this, what I need to do is click where, oh, if I zoom out a little bit, maybe I didn't get the bottom of it. So once I adjust it, if I click, it'll reapply it there to that. And so let's now run it and see if I do indeed collide with a tree. So where is the closest tree? Here we go. So there, you see like I'm holding up and I can't go. I'm walking, but it doesn't work. And there we go. So there is, you can kind of set the, it's this Z index and the Y sort in order to be able to control allowing me to go behind the trees, and we can talk about that at a later point in the class, but for right now what we're just trying to do is handle this collision. So we've got our tree collision, but we don't have collisions here with the edge of the water because we want to be able to stop right here at the shore, and then we don't want to be able to walk up on these cliffs. And so that's going to be kind of the most time consuming, but it's going to help us get the hang of how to do this. So again, we're going to go back to our tile set here, and we're going to try to paint on some shapes. And so let's start first with, let's see. Let's start here. So what we want to do is we need to kind of define the areas that are illegal boundaries for where our where our player can't go. And so what I'm going to do is if I click on this, it shows it here inside of this window. And if I zoom back in, what I can do is I can say reset to default tile shape. So what this does is it blocks out the whole area. So if I click here, that would block my player from going anywhere here, right? And you might think, hey, what if we just actually, instead of putting that here, what if, so here, let me clear that out. What if instead of applying it to the sand, what if I just said, let's block out all of our water? So if I ran this, you would find that you couldn't move anywhere. And the reason for that is, if you remember the way that we did our layers, if you take a look here at your tile map, remember the water is kind of underneath everything, right? So we need to actually define the interactions with the stuff on our ground layer and our cliffs layer by defining these collisions here on the tile set. So I'm going to drag this back up so that we can play around with it, and I'm going to clear this out. So to clear it out, I'm going to go here, hit clear, and then paint that over top of it. So now let's go back down to our sand. So let's bring this in, and what we need to do is draw a shape that will kind of encompass this water area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of keep adding points along here like that, and I could just kind of keep going like this. Something that might be helpful, right, is I could here, grid snap. So I could toggle grid snap. I can then kind of determine how many pixels I have, right? So these are 16 by 16. So if I wanted like full granularity here, I could say, all right, allow me to adjust this to every kind of known pixel that we could have here, right? And I could put this here, could kind of have another one here, just to kind of very clearly define where I'm allowed to walk and where I'm not allowed to walk. So we could say maybe something roughly like that. That's fine. So now to paint this onto here, now that I've done it, I will click there, and now we can see that this area is kind of has this blue around it. So this is where I would collide, and it wouldn't let me go past that point. Now the most helpful thing to do is kind of be strategic in how you approach this, right? So this is kind of the mirrored image of this. So if I click here, we see it brings that in. If I go down to here, what I can do is you can see that there's all these different rotates and flips here. So if I say flip vertically, that will do the correct flip, and I can click here and paint over top of that. And that will allow me to walk down here. And so that's what we want to do, is kind of like use these different flips and rotates, and you can use these keyboard shortcuts over here to sort this out. Right, so I'm going to hit F to fill it back in, and now what I need to do is I'm going to try for this shape right here. So I'm going to actually do this as a series of 2 different shapes here. So I could do this one here, and then if I do this add polygon tool, I can add a whole other different polygon here, and then click back to there. So now I have 2 different polygons. I can paint that on there, and that works great. And what I should have done was rotated it and put it on there, but I wasn't thinking. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this shape to here by saying let's rotate this by 90 degrees to the right, and then if I click there, boom, we have that there. Is there anything else that's similar for my sand here that I can apply that to? And nope, I don't see anything. So yeah, so let's go back to trying to do these different things. I'm going to do a little time lapse here of how I approach this, and you can kind of do this on your own and follow along if you would like. Alright, so I finished up doing a rough sketch for both the cliffs and the sand here. So you can see for the cliffs, what I did is I just went ahead and drew the boundaries as being all of this is not encompassed. So if you wanted the people to be able to walk up on the cliffs, like say that you had a ramp that would allow them to go up onto here, you would want to allow them to walk in these green parts and just do a boundary around the borders here. But what I did is I went ahead and just closed it all off here, which is fine for that. And then for the sand, what I did is I did a border around the transparent part of the outside, which is going to be occupied with the water. And so it will allow them to walk right up to the edge, but not go over the edge and into the water. So that is the goal kind of in drawing these different shapes here. So here I filled in kind of the positive space, and here what I did is I filled in the negative space. And so if I were to run this, we should hopefully see that it works. So I'm going to walk up to this cliff, and you can see like my head goes up to it. That's the reason for kind of drawing that smaller collision box here, because we don't want my head to stop like right as I start to get to that point. We want it to allow me to walk up to there, but it does not allow me to walk on it. You can see like maybe I could define these a little bit larger because it almost looks like I'm standing on there. And again, you can kind of fiddle around with that and draw them until your heart's content. And you can see that this all works. One thing that is helpful to know is that if you want to, as you're playing around with your tile map, your tile set, and you're painting on these different things, if I say like maybe I wanted to copy this one up to here, there is this picker tool here where if I copy this, what it will do is it will pick that exact shape here, and then I could choose to paint that somewhere else. So that's another helpful tool amongst all the other tools built into here. But that is kind of the basics of adding collisions here. So we need to make sure that they're on the same layers, draw our collision shapes by adding that physics layer here, and draw our collision shape here with our collision shape 2D, and then that should govern our interactions here between all these different shapes.